Welcome to the Growth Buyer Podcast, where we engage with top business leaders who share their experiences and provide real insights that help them attract customers, retain staff, and grow their bottom line. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hi there, I'm Kevin Borg, and I'm the host of the show, where I feature inspiring leaders from various backgrounds and industries who are willing to share their stories and insights. Today's podcast is brought to you by Spinutech. At Spinutech, we help middle market clients and larger grow their businesses by doing things with their digital advertising, from helping them design and develop the right website, the right messaging, to fine-tune all their advertising campaigns around search engine optimization, paid search, paid social, ongoing content marketing. We help our clients attract new customers, grow existing clients, and also become more successful. Spinutech, thank you so much for your sponsorship today. Well, I'm super excited to introduce today's guest today. Today's guest is Christine Guilfoyle. Christine is the President of SEEHER, the global initiative to champion the positive representation of women and eliminate gender bias in marketing, media, and entertainment. Prior to being appointed President of SEEHER, Christine was the Executive Vice President of Membership, where she increased the organization's membership to more than 7,250 of the world's leading brands, media companies, platforms, and research organizations. Before SEEHER, Christine was the Senior Vice President, Group Publisher at the Meredith Corporation, where she notably oversaw sales and marketing for Better Homes and Gardens, the largest Meredith Corporation brand, working with media brands like Martha Stewart Living, Shape, and the Magnolia Journal. In addition to her great career, Christine's been recognized by many, including Folio magazine, who inaugurated Christine to their top women in media. She also is a longstanding member of the Cosmetic Executive Women. She runs it, and the New York Women in Communications, and a whole lot more. Christine, welcome to the Growth Buyer Podcast.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I'm delighted to be here today.
Yeah, I'm delighted as well. And I think our audience is going to be delighted to know a little bit more about you. Maybe tell us, where did you grow up? Maybe when you were a little girl, what did you aspire you wanted to be when you had a career? Where you went to school and so on and so forth.
Sure. Well, I had the great fortune of growing up on the South Shore of Long Island. I went to Bayshore High School. I played sports and spent my formative years on Fire Island, waitressing at the Kismet Inn, pretty wonderful youth, knowing always that getting into New York City and being able to have a career here was definitely the path I wanted to take. Doing what exactly, I did not know. I'm a political science major and a philosophy minor, someone who didn't take a single marketing or communications course when I was in high school or in college. So, it's funny how things happen.
It is. And I think most of our guests share I know you made it to New York, and we'll let you tell that story, but so many of our guests here, their intent, as in their upbringing or even through their college scholastic side of things, it's not the career they ended up in. And so, love to hear so political science, tell us, what did you do when you got out of school?
Well, you know what? I think the thing kind of grounded in my DNA is that my parents, my mom and dad, were whatever I wanted to do, right? And ultimately encouraged me. I went to Marist College. I spent my whole junior year abroad and, encouraged me with a liberal arts education to try to do a bunch of things. And I would say, luckily for me, I'm a terrible test taker. I did horribly on the LSATs. And as a result of that, the dread of, oh my God, at 22, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? I ended up entering this wonderful business that we call advertising and media. And frankly, most people say 20 plus years. I'm going to go out there and boldly say 30 plus years. It is a career that has served me incredibly well with the work that I've been able to do. But truly, Kevin, what I would say, more importantly, the people that I have been able to meet along the way.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear the journey. So, you don't do well on the LSATs, and you find your way into advertising, and you talk about the people. So somewhere took someone who probably didn't have a lot of direction. I know what they're going to do there. I'm at 22 years old. I don't know what I'm going to do. Help us understand, like, was it you that changed? Was it someone saw something in you? How did you end up in the advertising career? And it's been so rewarding back to you. Like, tell us a little bit about that journey and how you grew in the space.
Sure. I mean, listen, I think that you're either born as someone who sits at the edge of their seat or not, fire in the belly or not. And I definitely had both of those aspects, the edge and the fire. I started at a publishing company in the marketing department, and in those days without Google, you actually went to the phone book, right? Like you called up vendors, you did all of these tasks that we now kind of take for granted. But I understood that serving my manager and facilitating my to-do list and always asking to do more and to learn why it was that I was doing what I was doing helped to serve me, right? And, in today's day, frankly, I think maybe that isn't the right thing anymore. Or maybe people who are coming into our industry don't have people to model after.
Yes.
As a result of not being in the office every day.
I definitely subscribe to that. And I've always said, we're 4 or 5 weeks away from celebrating 4 years ago that we went remote March 17th of 2020. I don't know why the date sticks in my head, but it does. We're 4 or 5 weeks away from reaching that 4-year anniversary. Who would have known? Who would have thought? But as I reflect back at what's changed the most is I feel for the people who are earliest in the stage of their career, not getting the opportunity to get accidental mentorship, accidental leadership, accidental and intentional cross-training that would take place. But I can remember being very early in my career, I purposely showed up very early in the morning and hung out at the coffee pot where my boss would be and got to say good morning to my boss purposely. And maybe I was brown-nosing a little bit, but I wanted to be different. And in those times where we got to spend 3 minutes at the coffee pot, a couple mornings a week, I got lucky to run into him there. I think he saw something different in me too. And so he started to give me more time. And next thing I know, he's asking me to attend a meeting that wasn't on anybody's radar. He's asking me if I, want to go to lunch every once in a while. And I think when we are in the environment, say, where we have the optionality of the flexibility of working remote, we're missing that opportunity of fostering some of that opportunity to learn to see who the overachievers are and some of the nature. And so I feel for those earlier in the stage of their career missing out on those opportunities, and many of them don't even know what they're missing out because they've never had that experience so far.
Yeah, I would say it's two things, Kevin. I think it's connections. Right? What you had with your boss is you built a connection. He came to rely upon you. He knew that you were in early. He knew that you were a go-getter. He might have known that you were brown-nosing a little bit, but you know what? Frankly, he didn't care. Like he needed someone in his camp and you were satisfying that. So I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing is that particularly when you're starting out, it's everything you hear and see that goes on that are all unconscious lessons.
Yes.
Who's interacting with who? How do the people behave when the big boss walks away? Overhearing people on the phone. I mean, frankly, when was the last time we all just had a phone conversation, right?
Right.
That whole notion of cold calling and building relationships that came from work in the phones. Hearing those types of things, that osmosis of being around, I think that's the other thing that's missing. And I surely love the flexibility of, being able to allocate, tasks to days from home versus days in the office. But I feel that at the stage that I'm at, and like you just said, I think that those that are not in it don't even know they're missing it.
Correct.
And eventually, I think it is something that will impact them getting to that next level, whatever that next level may be.
Yes, I agree. And, maybe last point or two on that. I think, we're coming out of a couple of years ago, living through what, the Wall Street Journal called the Great Resignation.
Yes.
And I think the Great Resignation, part of the fuel of the Great Resignation of those people in the earlier stages of their career weren't getting the promotions that maybe a prior regime or two were getting. And it's because the bosses didn't know their capability and someone else romanced them that they'd get that opportunity somewhere else. But the disconnect is they just weren't advancing as quickly as they would when they were getting that opportunity for cross-training and learning. And, I think in the in-office environment, if a coworker was having to deal with a hostile customer on a phone, when they got off that call, others learned, like, why was that customer so upset? What caused them to be upset? How are we solving it? Or vice versa. Someone just goes, and they just, got an order or something like that. Like, what was it that they did? They were learning just by the daily interaction, and we're missing some of those challenging times, which makes everyone get better because nobody wants to have to deal with that irate customer. Or how do I have more of these kind of days where I'm
well, it's the talk it out, right? It's like hanging up with, on both of your scenarios, being able to get off the phone and talk it out. And, I feel very fortunate, Kevin, in my career. I think back to all of the young people, predominantly women. Again, I grew up in, big media companies who I gave their first job. I helped them get promoted to their second job, maybe with me or not with me. I rehired them again. I met their parents, and then I met their boyfriend, who became their spouse, and I received their Christmas card with their children. Right. And to me, at this stage of my career, truly that will be one of, as I said at the start of this, the most important thing is the people. And I just wonder, is anyone able to build, kind of that depth and breadth of relationship in the new world order, if you will?
I think we're trying to explore how to get there. And part of it is are we going back to the office so we don't have to, or are we living the new norm? And how are we adjusting to create that environment that accidentally took place in the daily interactions we had before?
Yeah, it's a balance.
It is a balance. It is. And we'll see where it shakes out. And I'm going to follow up maybe a little bit to, just growing, other leaders around you and people at SEEHER. How are you adjusting to maybe working with the new Gen Z habits? Are you seeing your style changing, leaders around you changing? But how are you working around maybe these changes that we see coming out of the Gen Z environment?
Well, I happen to be the proud mother of two Gen Zers, both girls, and sometimes they're like aliens to me.
Yeah.
But what I will tell you, I think some of what we're talking about kind of gets slapped on to Gen Z, and really I see that cross-generationally. Either that, or I've done my girls a disservice because they are as work the plan and plan the work as I have always been. And, I think they feel lacking in when they go to the office. One of my daughters happens to be in the business. The other is not. But when they go to the office, that there aren't people there. When
Right.
they have finished an assignment, that they're not hearing right away. I mean, listen, no Gen Zer, wants to be sitting in their childhood bedroom,
Right.
waiting for someone to respond to their Excel chart.
Right.
So I actually think that every generation gets brushed with, look, I'm Gen X, and it was like, oh, we didn't care. We were the latchkey kids. Like, I wish there was a few things I could take off my list that I don't care about, right? Or
Right.
that I was laissez-faire about. I think, again, it goes back to, are you an edge of the seater?
Yes.
Are you an overachiever? Are you someone who has fire in the belly? And are you in a place that acknowledges and respects that? Are you in a place with people who will take you aside, regardless of whether they're in your own group,
Right.
but they see things, and will you get those opportunities? But listen, I think the Gen Z is like every generation as it relates to kind of work, and they're leaning into it. I think the real difference with Gen Z is how open, willing, and ready they are, and to just accept everyone as it is that they are, right?
Yeah.
Like whether that's sexual fluidity, whether that is, how someone is expressing, their person. I think they're just like, yeah, so what? And well, of course. And I actually think that everyone, has things to learn from each generation, but I think their openness, their non-judgment as it relates, their tolerance, their allyship,
Yes,
are lessons that, we all can, the reverse mentor and learning from it.
and
Right.
I totally agree. I totally agree. And I think just raising, I've got two boys, and I remember when my oldest son didn't seem to have the same work ethic, I thought that maybe might be helpful for him to grow his career. He wasn't showing up. They had that early morning coffee for his boss. I think that nature, and I remember sharing with me very, very, very directly, it just seemed to come roll right off his tongue. Hey, Dad, I know that's the way that you did it, but it doesn't mean that's the only way. And I'm going to get to the same point and do it a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, he has, but they found out more efficient ways to do so, and aren't doing it just because that's the way it was always done, or that's how you earned your stripes in prior regimes. They're finding new and more creative ways to do it, where they're getting better balance of where their lives are. And I think they're happier, and they're not checking it off the box. I did it this way because that's what I was told to do it, and everybody else. I did it this way because I think I can get to the same outcome, and I can enjoy the journey better.
Yeah. And listen, I think that, all of your staff, but most notably the staff that is the most different from you, is your greatest consumer barometer.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
You are not going, I remember when we were saying, like, I'm millennial minded. It's like, okay, or so we tell ourselves.
Right. Label yourself.
I haven't heard anybody who has a Gen Z say I'm Gen Z minded. Right.
Yes. No.
Because again, I think that they're a completely different animal. Yes. And I think it's a good thing. And I think, particularly in our business of advertising, there are future customers. Absolutely. There are future target audience. And, listening to, acknowledging, and really trying to get to understand, right? Because words, there's a lot of nuance. And like, what do you mean I shouldn't call you ladies? How would you like to be addressed, right?
Yes.
And what we have found, and I'm sure many others, if you are open to listening and participating to hear why what you may have said or how you have phrased something not be exactly correct. Yes. Usually a great dialogue ensues with each side sharing, so that, you come to this place, where you learn and you're able to take away this wonderful nugget. Yes. To move your next step forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And let's use that nugget you just spoke about. Let's learn a little bit more about SEEHER. So tell us a little about the organization, who you serve, how your members benefit, and how you bring up the quality for women.
Sure. Well, thank you for that. In 2016, the Association of National Advertisers, my employer, yes, launched the SEEHER movement that was committed to increasing the representation and accurate portrayal of women and girls, yes, in media, marketing, advertising, and entertainment.
Yep.
Because it was a good thing to do. It was the right societal thing to do.
Yes.
But let me tell you, since that time, we also have found it is the business driving thing to do. And when I say business driving, philanthropy, charity, society, again, all of that is very, very wonderful, but we're all in business.
Right.
And growing our business, expanding our business, customer intel and understanding is at the core of who's a leader and who maybe hasn't quite figured it out.
Yes.
So SEEHER was launched around representation and portrayal. And back then, oh, so many years ago, in 2016, it was a
Right.
pretty one-dimensional look at gender.
Yep.
We know now that that would be completely unacceptable and that we really need to look at gender, and we call them the 7 tenets, right? It's race, religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation, body type, age, ability, and frankly, probably so much more.
Sure.
Because everyone is more than just one thing, right? If we think about, the dynamics of who it is we are and where we came from and how
Yes.
we raise a family and celebrate a holiday and, it's targeting, man, right?
Yes. Yes.
And there's no longer this let's just do general market X, and really what we do at SEEHER is we have, we're a membership-based organizations. And as you said so nicely in the beginning of the call, we are incredibly proud and in service to the world's largest marketers, media companies, agencies, platforms, research organizations, all of which understand that understanding consumers allows you to transact with them
Yes.
more authentically,
Yes.
in addition to the fact that you get to do good for society.
Yes.
Because we know that stereotypes, whether conscious or unconscious,
Right.
and biases exist in the world.
Sure.
So how do we as an industry, through our content, and that content exists now in more ways than it ever has, how do we ensure that it is authentic, accurate, respectful, that the way in which the characters are cast serve as a role model? So SEEHER has something called GEM, the Gender Equality Measurement. Marketers lean into KPIs, and GEM is our proprietary measurement tool. And we go in market and we ask consumers, what did you think? And we have done that with over 300,000 pieces of content, both ads and media. We have predictive themes and drivers. We measure in 14 different markets in language. And in the U.S. specifically, although we do have that global footprint, our work in GEM is the deepest here in the U.S. We're also able to boost the sample for Black, Hispanic, and API consumer reaction to that content.
Wow.
And again, why is that important? Because each one of those segments, by age and by multicultural deep dive, provides the marketer and the media company with levels,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Multidimensional viewpoints on how it is that they can improve.
Wow. It is very complex. And, I think you say, started in 2016, kind of maybe with a social responsibility. It was the right thing to do. But then you say, really, it's the right thing for business too. Before you took over as president, you were in charge of, growing membership.
Yes.
Membership to over 7,250 members. What was it? What was your go-to-market strategy, and how did you take what started as maybe the socially right thing to do that it's actually right for business? Can you talk a little bit about how you're so successful at growing membership so quickly and so large?
Well, thank you. And actually, there's been a long line of people who have given, a great amount of time and laid a wonderful infrastructure. And I'll say this to you. It is probably the only kind of sales job that I ever have had.
Wow.
Where there are not clear no's.
Yes.
You call on these leading marketers. Nobody says, I don't believe in gender equality, right?
Right.
Let's face it. I think what it comes down to is what helped us to firmly solidify that this was important is that we built out a suite of tools, right? So in the beginning, it was like, join us, commit to doing this, and we'll start our mission. Now is we are in a movement. We have a suite of tools which you can activate against.
Yes.
Through creative development, with insights and analytics, throughout the planning and buying, and then an amplification, right? So each of those slices of the pie that are important to the marketer and the ecosystem that exists around the marketer money,
yes,
we have very clearly accessible, implementable, embeddable tools to show how business can grow as a result.
Yeah.
Getting that message solidified, right? And getting it to the right person, and I like to say who holds the pencil, right? Who can write the check for membership.
Right.
And then not just write that check, but ensure that their teams understand what they have access to, that they're asked about it throughout the funnel, not just at the end,
right?
So that those best practices become habit.
Yeah.
And when that habit happens, and then the training of new people coming in along, it just becomes part of your fundamental day-to-day.
Yeah. Wow. That's a lot. And so, obviously huge growth. You've got through all of that. A lot of this probably is new to people too. So, trying to provide a service or membership to somebody who doesn't have the need for it, right? So, we grew up with AAA. We got AAA because if our car broke down, we wanted someone to be able to go fill up, change our tire or tow our car. But people didn't necessarily know they needed this membership. We've done a great job of conveying the value that is, measuring it with GEM, all of those things, all this momentum. We're just starting off in 2024 right now.
Yeah.
How do you see this momentum continuing? And there's a lot of other things out there competing with us right now. We've got Olympics, we've got an election. How do you keep this she economy moving forward with such progress you've had so far and a lot of competing other initiatives out there, taking place right now?
Well, I'm going to answer to this economy because, that's my word for end of 23 and 24. And ultimately, when you think economy, think about women's sports, think about Taylor Swift, Beyonce, think about the record amount of spending associated, with each of those women driving. Listen, Nebraska volleyball, 92,000 fans in a football stadium. That's extraordinary growth. So if you will build it in a way that works best for women and girls to engage with it, they show up. Barbie, we didn't talk about Barbie.
Yes.
If you build it for them and they feel seen, heard, and valued, they will open up their pocket. The 2024 question, I think, is incredibly interesting, right? The Olympics is fantastic. Do you know it's the first time that the number of male and female athletes at an Olympics is going to be equal? That's never happened before, which, if you think back to the Greek times when the Olympics happened, and in 2024, it's the first time where there's a level playing field, that's kind of scary.
Right.
And what I will tell you is that the GEM score I talked about, Kevin, has actually leveled out.
Wow.
So ultimately, it's not great. It's below the benchmark of what our high was. So we are an industry who likes to chase the shiny new toy.
Sure.
And what we want to convey and what our current members help us to convey is that this is not a nice to have, right? You can't decide, this year I'm going to market to women and next year I'm not going to, right? It's like women represent 50% of the population. They control 85% of household purchasing power, which, by the way, in the United States translates to $11 trillion. A lot
of money.
So to ignore this gatekeeper seems like not good business sense.
No, not with the importance of the KPIs that we all talk about, right?
Right?
Yeah.
And sometimes, remember, this is advertising. This isn't logic.
Right.
You know, you get caught up, you know, let me try this new tool. Let me try this new technology. Let me try this new agency. Let me try this new piece of creative. And frankly, we forget who the end user is. It's people.
Yes.
So, you know, the advertising business is a people business.
Sure.
And 50% of said people are women.
Yes.
And, you know, when you go back to your Gen Z cohort, Gen Z and the next generation after them, Alpha, you know, who are 14 years old and not born.
Yes.
They are more aware of brands and advertising than every other generation.
Yep.
And I say to prospective members, you may be okay with letting go boomer, an X, and maybe the millennial. But if you continue to market to Gen Z and Alpha the way you always had, you are never going to win them.
Yes, I agree with that. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And their lifetime value, I think the estimates for Alpha, it's the first generation where they're expecting a life expectancy of 100.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
They're going to be the most diverse generation. They're going to be the biggest generation.
Yes.
They are going to be the most technologically sophisticated, not only with the social element of technology, the cashless element of commerce, but also the overlay of the AI and or whatever happens with the metaverse, right?
Yes.
So there's no way we can market to them in the same way.
Yes, you remind me so much, because you remind me so much of a guest I had not long ago, Ann Hand. Ann is the CEO of Super League, who is working in the metaverse today and helping advertisers connect to the Gen Z and the Alpha generation here. And it's the wave of the future, right? And it's so close, and yet so far removed from many of us from even understanding what it is too. It just leaves me here.
You know, it's so interesting because if you know, AI, the Association of National Advertisers Word of the Year, you know, I happen to be at CES, and I am sure that at every stage, at every conference that goes on this year, there will be a multitude of AI conversations, and rightfully so. But it's people who code.
Yes.
And as we're coding and as we're feeding these machines that are going to allow us, you know, to have all of these unbelievable capabilities, we'll stay in the positive. People have unconscious bias and unconsciously perpetuate stereotypes.
Yes.
So we have this wonderful opportunity as we move into the next generation of things, you know, not just next generation of customers, but next generation of technologies, to right the wrongs that may have been done. Again, in thinking about the authentic, accurate, respectful representation of all characters,
yes,
but of women and girls specifically.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, it's amazing what you do, Christine. It's absolutely amazing. And to start with a social, and then to tie that's this business component, realize that, you know, 50% of the population is female, and it's even more encompassing than as you're describing it right now. You know, reflecting back on how we started this call, we talked about your upbringing, and you went to school and, you know, political science major and all this stuff, and ended up in advertising, now president of SEEHER. But you talked about, you know, some people maybe saw something in you and gave you some time. Can you talk about your journey of growth, and maybe, you know, did you have a mentor or mentors, and how did they help you, you know, see the world in a different way and give you insight and experience and exposure?
You know, Kevin, it's so funny. I don't know that people talked about mentors and sponsors, you know, way back when when the dinosaurs walked the earth. Right. You know, my first boss was a woman, and her name was Beverly Greiper, and she was tough but fair, and she pushed the people who she thought had the best potential, and she was extraordinary to me. I would say after her, most of the people who, you know, were my management were men at the time. And again, it was at a time when there were not many seats at the table for people who were in underrepresented classes, women, minorities, people with disabilities, etc. Sometimes there was just one chair. So I don't blame the lack of female mentors on the fact that women didn't want to do it. I think, early on in my career, it was like everybody had their head down and was just working hard, to succeed.
Yes.
And that's why I would say that I mostly had male allies, many of which I'm still in touch with, but I don't know that I would give them the formal title of mentor.
Yes.
And I'll tell you why. I had managers who would call me, one very particularly, because he needed to get stuff done. And he understood that I was his kind of go-to get shit done girl. Yep. And, ultimately, I thrived in those type of environments. Often, I didn't want to leave the assignment that I was in because I didn't feel like the work was done yet.
Right.
But I look back on, and I worked for this gentleman, 2 different times in my career, and each time it was the same. And I say that I don't think he was my mentor because I think that we had a mutually beneficial relationship towards a goal. And again,
Yes.
The goal was to drive the business.
Yes.
We still exchange Christmas cards. I have known him since, the late 1990s, his wife, his children, and he mine.
Yes.
But maybe I am applying a modern day definition to mentor.
Sure.
Towards a scenario that didn't exist, or at least didn't exist for me.
Yeah. No, I think in my own journey, I never had a conversation with people who mentored me, but as I reflect back, they absolutely mentored me, but it was really just the interaction of them. They were more experienced than I was.
Yeah.
They had more experienced than I was. I would say more educated, kind of maybe go along with that. I think the way they carried themselves, their charisma, their way of trying to get people to rally around their concept, their ability to solve problems when things went south, all of that, I wanted to be around more often because I thought it was helping me be able to better have more experience myself. And so there are any formal conversations like, hey, thanks for your great mentor, or would you consider me mentoring me, or any of those types of things?
Yeah, no.
Maybe we down to search, we didn't talk about those things. But absolutely, I saw some people, I said, one day if I could be like that person, I think I'd accomplish one level of success or something like that. And indirectly, I just found myself like going to see my boss for coffee before anybody else would get there. I just found myself wanting to be around other people who I admired and who inspired me. And in that, loosely, I was mentored, but it was really just in my mentor today that taught me this phrase, Kevin, remember this, you are who you hang with. Choose your company appropriately. And he shared that with me many years after I just started choosing to hang with him more because I knew I was becoming more experienced, more educated, more polished, and better at what I did. But we never talked about mentoring. I just wanted to be around someone who helped bring out a better Kevin. And I had a few of those out there in my journey and just wanted to be around those people who inspired me and gave me an opportunity to see the world through a different lens that helped me expand in my horizons.
Kevin, I think that I also learned things not to do, right? I think so often we're focused on, and it sounds like you had a fantastic journey, but I worked for a handful of people who I wouldn't want to hang with them.
Yes.
And I wouldn't want anybody who I wanted to kind of behave in the way that I thought was the way to behave to hang with them.
Yes.
And I think sometimes for me, the best lessons were, again, to see how people did some things, how they behaved, how they motivated, what their work ethic was, a variety of things.
Yes.
And not to replicate those things.
Yes. Yes.
So, I think so often, when people today are looking for the mentor, and they may be looking for them to, tell them all the things they should do. Yes. I think it's equally as important to be open to hearing about what you shouldn't do, right? And it may be okay for someone, and you just have to decide, like, is it going to be okay for you?
And I totally agree. And when who I referred to as my mentor shared that story about Kevin, who you hang with, choose accordingly, he was sharing that because we were both in the company of someone who was not doing some things correctly.
Yeah.
It took a little while to get visibility to it, to realize that this wasn't a good person, and this wasn't going to lead us into a good scenario. And it came about what not to be around. And I think, fast forwarding into where my career is today, as we're guiding people towards things that we're encouraging to do, I've learned to now adapt. So now that we kind of share, this is what we're asking for. Let me share you some, this is what we're not wanting to have happen. This is what we don't want to see. So you can fill in that side too, that isn't left to be assumed. Like, well, I told them what we want, but I told them what this does not look like. To help make sure, because that can be just as educational as trying to say, here's what I'm asking to be done, or here's what we'd like to have the outcome, or here's what our ideas are. But I'll say, here's what they're not. It just helps fill that gap of unknown. And the more you can bring the gap of understanding, the shorter the gap of understanding between two parties, the shorter amount of frustration or friction exists. In trying to lead people with what you're expecting of them is an expectation, but maybe what it doesn't look like here just helps reduce what that gap between what they're hearing is and what you're trying to communicate. And the lesser that gap, the lesser the frustration, the lesser the friction, the faster everybody finds a parallel and finds a way to move forward and grow.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. And sometimes you just have to go.
Sometimes you do just have to go. Christine, thank you so much. Super enjoyed our conversation today. We've been talking to Christine Guilfoyle, President of SEEHER. Christine, you shared a lot today. It was amazing content. I'm sure there's going to be some people who might want to reach out to you later. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Well, you can absolutely reach out to me on LinkedIn. And follow us on the SEEHER LinkedIn or mine, or you can email seeherinfo.net. It will be my absolute pleasure to be in touch. And by the way, I didn't mean for us to go, because honestly, this has been so delightful, Kevin. Thank you so much for having me and for such a wonderfully provocative conversation. I really appreciate it.
Well, I enjoyed it too, and I think our audience too. But I think just to respect what your organization has done with SEEHER and take what was a socially, neat concept in 2016, but to translate that into what you have today, and now take that beyond just gender into all the different other areas that you have today. It is what the Gen Zers and the Alpha Gen, it is what they are. And to see that you've been able to translate that into not just social responsibility, but now fiscal responsibility and things of that nature, that's really where, quote unquote, the rubber meets the road, so to speak. Sure. And to pioneer all of that stuff and the traction that you all had, it's definitely admirable what you're doing, and it's appreciated what you're doing. And for those of you who haven't seen some of this, I do encourage you to go to Christine's website. I've been to it and I've watched quite a few of the videos, and they are moving and they are inspiring and they are educational. And I think the world's a better place because of what you and your peers at SEEHER do.
Well, and thank you so much. But I have to give all of the credit to the marketers, the agencies, the platforms that are our members, right? They are doing the good work. They are putting in the time. They're leaning into the best practice. And we have the wonderful pleasure of amplifying and showcasing that to the world. So thank you so much, Kevin. But, when you get to work for the group of people that we do, they make it easy.
Yes. Yeah. And it's great that they've embraced it. So, Christine, thank you again. We really appreciate you sharing your insights, your stories. And we wish you continued success on your journey.
Thank you very much. And right back at you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Growth Fire podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.